The Honest Truth with Benito Vergatini. Smile 90.4 FM.
Joining us this evening on Smile FM to elaborate on key shifts in the country's used car market, this following January sales data from AutoTrader, is the CEO at AutoTrader, George Mienie. George, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It is an absolute pleasure. Really nice to be on your show again.
AutoTrader's data shows a strong start to this year. What factors do you believe are sustaining demand in the used car market?
Well, I think firstly, the decline in interest rates, however slight, is helping to raise consumer sentiment. So consumers have a positive outlook for the future. Used car price inflation is also down. So I don't mean declining, but I mean it is less than what it was. We saw an inflationary increase in average used car prices on AutoTrader's platform of just under 2% in January. So I think used cars are becoming cheaper to drive. But that is also driven by a sharp, what seems to be a swing to the new car market. So new cars are very buoyant at the moment, with new car sales rising year on year in January in terms of passenger car sales, particularly in South Africa, and this swing to new cars as a result of really cost-effective models coming into the market: Suzuki Swift, the Cherry, many of the Chinese models, good value for money. So consumers would obviously opt for new cars more than used, which creates a little bit of oversupply in used, decline in prices, and then the swing happens again. It's like a pendulum.
So with dominant brands like Toyota, Volkswagen and Ford, do you anticipate then, particularly what you're mentioning, George, about the swing to the new car market, that emerging players like a Cherry, like an Eventual are changing the landscape somewhat?
Well, it's early days to say changing the landscape. They are growing at a exponential rate versus all other brands on the platform. But they're only taking approximately 3% of the market at the moment from AutoTrader's data. And I believe we are representative of the market when we touch probably 80 to 90% of listings in the country.
Right.
The Toyota Hilux and the Ford Ranger being the two South African bukkies in the form of the double cab are still by far the most sold models on our platform, or from our platform, with 1,900 vehicles being sold in January in terms of the Ford Ranger, and 1,500 in terms of the Toyota Hilux. So still the most popular vehicles. And just to put that into perspective, the Toyota Starlet, which is the new entrant into the top list, sold a mere 457 in January this year, but that's up 62% from January 2024. So you can see the sharp rise in demand, but still not topping the Ford Ranger and Toyota Hilux. We're a bucky country in, particularly Cape Town. Cape Town's quite a bucky country too.
That being said, though, George, I see that the Volkswagen Polo has overtaken the Hilux somewhat in sales rankings. Being as you say, we do love our buckies. Is there a shift in consumer preferences?
Well, the Polo hasn't overtaken the Hilux, but it's very close. And if you add the two Polos together, the Polo and the Polo Vivo, definitely almost double the sales of the Hilux. So in that statement, you're correct in terms of the Polo itself.
Yes.
But to separate the Vivo and the Polo out, it's still below the Hilux, but it's always been up there. It's a really nice small car, especially for entrance into the market. And VW Polo is made in South Africa, which I think is a draw card when it comes to South Africans, is because it's assembled in South Africa.
George Mienie from AutoTrader joining us in conversation this evening. He's CEO at AutoTrader. You're welcome to share your thoughts as we just looking at some of the shifts resulting from January sales data from AutoTrader, ranking by the most sold, as George had mentioned. Yes, sold dominated by the Ford Ranger and the Toyota Hilux. Then come the Polos, the Volkswagen, as the Polo as well as the Polo Vivo, and rounding off the top five is the Toyota Fortuner. The average used car price has also seen a year-on-year increase, but with a slight monthly decline. Are you able to elaborate on that, and how does that impact upon dealers' pricing strategies?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting and relevant question. So towards the end of 2024, we started to see this used car price bubble begin to deflate. We're not in negative territory. I don't know if we will get to negative territory in terms of used car prices, but it has put a lot of pressure on car dealers who now find themselves perhaps over the last couple of months in a situation where they've bought cars at too high a price and can't sustain the retail price of that vehicle. I think they're beginning to trade out of that over the last 2 months because we're seeing quite a bit of buoyancy from a used car dealer point of view. It happened towards the end of last year, between about September and December, where we started seeing these prices decline. So you can imagine, you buy a car at a certain price, used car prices begin to fall, and you as a dealer are sitting with that car at a slightly inflated price. And with the market indicators and the data and the live market data that AutoTrader has, gone are the days where you can just leave that car up for sale at its old price. You have to adjust it as a seller. So consumers coming onto AutoTrader will see the market adjusted price because the market is quite dynamic and works day to day.
Yeah. What is it about this light commercial vehicle, the Nissan NP200? It seems to sustain itself, to sustain the demand, just given all the competition, yet it still makes it into the top 10, George.
Well, I think the phenomenon there is the fact that the Nissan NP200 is no longer available. There's no longer new ones coming into the market. So second-hand Nissan NP200s are a hot commodity at the moment. And part of the reason why they make it onto the used car sales list, it's a unique bukkie of its kind.
With Suzuki also achieving the highest yearly sales increase at plus minus 34% up, what factors do you feel have contributed to this success?
Well, very capable car at a very good price point. And I think that the Suzuki Swift took over where the Hyundai Getz left off. And they brought a really capable, modern-looking, very well-priced car into the market, and ate the Getz's lunch, I think, for lack of a better term. We shouldn't, however, forget the Toyota hybrid in terms of the cross, and the Toyota hybrid, while not on this list, is making waves in that it is growing faster than one could imagine. And that hybrid, because of fuel efficiency, is one of the hottest commodities Toyota has at the moment.
You mentioned Toyota. Is that still one of the most loved brands here in South Africa? Because we're speaking about Suzuki's increasing in sales, but there are Suzuki models which have been repurposed under the Toyota brand, which seems to be outselling Suzuki. Do we still love Toyota very much here in South Africa?
I think we do. You can just see that in the Toyota Hilux. In South Africans still love the Toyota, but other brands are rivaling, and we can't ignore those other brands. They are bringing cars into the market that are quite capable and are giving Toyota a run for their money. I think consumers in South Africa still go for Toyota because it is perceived to be reliable, it's perceived to hold its value, and there are a lot of second-hand Toyotas in the market.
Yeah. CEO at AutoTrader, George Mienie, joining us in conversation this evening, just helping us make sense of some of the shifts that have come through following the January sales data, which was recently released by AutoTrader. Share your thoughts on 0829 904 904. Toyota Hilux or Ford Ranger, where does your heart lie? Let us know on 0829 904 904. George, given the substantial month-on-month sales growth, how are dealerships then managing stock levels just to balance that supply and demand, and of course keeping those margins for the year?
So we provide dealers with very intuitive, up to the I'd say almost minute live market data is what we call it, and they use these in their pricing strategies. They're able to, at a click of a few buttons, establish market demand and supply as well as price positioning. So we offer them. This is going to be a bit of mumbo jumbo, but we offer them a couple of data points, which is what we call price to market. So how are your vehicles priced to the market, and that could change the next day because the market shifts. And what is the cost to market? So how much did you pay for that car relative to what the market is asking for that car, as well as how long will it take potentially to sell the car? And they can make these decisions in the purchasing of a vehicle as well as in the selling of a vehicle. So data at their fingertips, supplied by AutoTrader in dealerships in the form of digital tools, is how they keep their finger on the pulse today.
Yeah, with all of that data, is AutoTrader making use of AI to assist?
Oh, interesting question. So we have begun dabbling. I'll put it that way, and with more to come. So we are there. There is just so much data that AutoTrader produces in under the bonnet of the search engine and under the bonnet of the marketplace that we need AI assistance in order to make even more useful tools than we've made today, which we've used machine learning for and artificial intelligence in terms of natural language. Artificial intelligence will help make us take the next step.
Yeah. Lastly, George, just based on the January sales data, certainly is a strong start. Do you reckon, given key indicators, that this could be sustainable for this year?
Yeah, I mean, if interest rates continue to decline, so I think there's a couple of factors. If interest rates continue to decline, if GDP stays in positive territory, if inflation stays at 2 to 3%, and if government comes to the party with good regulations in the automotive economy, and when I mean good regulations, I mean trade relationships with international parties or other countries. I think if those four factors align, then the stars are aligned for a really good 2025.
Lastly, George, just around some of those factors, particularly with some of the utterances coming out of the US around AGOA, and it may have an impact on South Africa's the motor industry. What are some of the thoughts and plans from the sector that you've been able to pick up on?
Well, I mean, I think mostly it has a negative impact on exports.
Yeah.
As far as the automotive industry is concerned, most of our exports go to England and Europe, so we're not really impacted from a vehicle export point of view, but we are definitely impacted from a parts export point of view.
Yeah.
From an import perspective, most of our vehicles are, well, all of our vehicles are right-hand drive in South Africa, which means we have a limited source of supply, one of them being England, because they're also right-hand drive. So American vehicles are not imported into South Africa, so we're not impacted there. So I think we are somewhat impacted, but from an import of vehicles point of view, as well as an export of vehicles point of view, we're a right-hand drive country, which kind of helps us dodge that bullet.
Chief Executive Officer at AutoTrader, George Mienie. Appreciate your time and insights, George. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're most welcome.